In today's episode, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how I get this lens on this camera. Now, I've already had a video about this, or rather just kind of a little quick lens test. You can click the link in the description for that. But this is more about how I get this to work and why I like it. This is a 16mm C-mount lens. 16mm as in the sensor or film size, not the focal length. This is a 12-120 f2.2. What I want to start with is this. This is a C-mount to E-mount lens adapter. What you do is you take the lens adapter, you go into the back of the lens, and you give it a bit of a twist. Make sure it's in there firm, but not over-tightened. And you're ready to mount this on the camera. So following that this is the top of the lens, you just go in, twist like normal, and now you have the lens mounted on there. It's pretty simple, except when it comes to actually capturing some video, because you end up with the results like this. So as you can see, that doesn't fill the frame at all. And to counteract that with this particular lens and a camera combination, I do this specific setup. I actually have assigned to my C3 button the APS-C crop mode or Super 35 mode. So when I do that, that puts us here. So I actually go into the menu and go over to where it says zoom. And I set it on digital zoom. Now digital zoom, I have set to the button up here on the camera. So when I hit it, I can digitally punch in on the image. What you may notice is right here, it's got the little C. And when I go one more, it goes to a D. So the C is for clear image zoom. This is Sony's clear image zoom, which essentially gives you a clean 4K readout of what the sensor is seeing. As soon as you get into the D, the regular digital zoom, you start reducing the image quality. But I will say that as this lens is not a 4K capable lens, that doesn't really matter so much. You're not actually losing any real detail here when doing this. But you can see I kind of get it completely gone at 2. Different lenses have different coverage, so that's why it's nice to have this kind of scrollable thing where you can just digitally zoom in and out. And I'm still recording a 4K file, so even though it's pushing a little bit past 4K with the sensor, it's upscaling the sensor a tiny bit. That's okay. I want to show you here steady shot. So when you're using a C-mount lens, because they're a dumb adapter, there's no electronics behind it, the camera doesn't have any idea what focal length the lens is, so you have to actually go in and manually set it, which can be a pain with the zoom lenses, as they, as you're zooming, you're going to want to adjust this. If you're doing a long zoom, from 12 to 120 or vice versa, then I would set it to somewhere in the middle. I found that a pretty good spot for this would be to go into here and to set it for like 60 to 70 millimeter, right? Aiming more for the 60. And that gives you a pretty good amount of stability throughout the whole range. It's not as good as the appropriate focal length, but if you're doing a zoom shot, then it's better than nothing. Now, the things that I actually really enjoy about this lens, besides the unique flare and kind of organic feel that the lens gives, is the focal length and aperture kind of combination. So, as I said before, this is a 12-120 2.2. Now, if you were to look at the angle of view and depth of field kind of comparison to a 35mm equivalent, full frame equivalent, you're looking at a 36-360 f6.6, which isn't a real kind of number for us in that term, so I usually like to round it up to a 7.1. That may not seem like it's that big of a deal or going to give you a shallow depth of field in any way. You can still make some pretty shallow depth of field shots. I have this plant I'm going to shoot it with the skyline in the background, and you'll see when I focus on the plant, you cannot see the buildings in the background at all. And when I focus on the buildings, you only get this kind of wash of green in the shot, and that's basically it. Besides all of that, it's just a cool looking lens, and it has this crank, which is actually for the zoom. So you zoom in and out using this crank as opposed to just twisting. You can push in the crank and twist the traditional way, but this is just so much fun. At some point I will put up a video that is just kind of footage from this lens camera combination. So look forward to that sometime in the near future. And please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.